Good morning, friends. It is processing day number 2. This is part 2 of our processing video. If you caught the last video where I skinned my dough and quartered her up, I talked a little bit about what we would be doing in this particular video, and that's actually processing the meat, turning it into the edibles, if you will, grinding burger, cutting our steaks, cutting our roasts, and that's pretty much about all we do. Keeping it simple, and if I want to do snack sticks or something else, I can do that down the line with the burger. So in this video, we are going to show you trimming up the meat and how we package it, so on and so forth. So we're waiting on the rest of the crew. Got Kenny here behind me. We're getting started, just the two of us, and we got quite a few people that are going to join us and help out. Helps to have a gang when you're doing something like this. We got two deer to do. My buck from earlier this year, which we haven't put up a video of that yet, but we've got 3 or 4 more deer hunts that we'll be putting up ASAP. And then we're also doing my doe that I shot the last week of season here in Ohio. So here we go.
This is the front leg, front shoulder, and virtually all you do is bone it out. You could get some steaks and roasts out of it, but normally we like the burger better, so that's what we do. We make it into snack sticks, summer sausages, everything else. So this is just a process of virtually getting the meat off the bone. Once you do this, you kind of learn where the different joints and muscles lay, and you can peel it off fairly quickly. Luckily, my grinder is big enough that I can use some pretty big chunks. So it works out fairly well. We can just bone this out in big chunks and run it through the grinder.
I can see Kenny is doing the front shoulder of a deer, just peeling the meat right off the bone. You got to watch, there's a big bone that runs, it's part of the scapula actually, runs vertically along the scapula, and you're just going to cut on either side of that. That has saved many a deer's life, especially when it comes to archery. That shoulder can be tough to get a broadhead and arrow through. So as I described in our first video, the front shoulder, and as Kenny just said, is going to go all to burger meat. And all you're going to do is peel and cut away all the meat off that front shoulder, the scapula, and down the leg, throwing it in our burger pile, and we'll show you the big grinder. I said that we weren't professional butchers, and we're not, but Kenny does have professional equipment. It's a serious grinder, y'all. Okay, so we got one front leg completely done. I'm working on the other, but Kenny is starting on the roast part.
Okay, this is what we consider the top round, but virtually when you remove it from the deer, it's the top side of the leg. And virtually this is the finished product here, but this is how it looks when it comes off the deer. And virtually if you turn it on its side, you can see the membrane that holds it together. And you just kind of cut and peel this membrane off. Sometimes you can just pull it, sometimes you got to slice a little bit, but you want to come up with a nice top round roast. Now if you wanted to, you could slice this into steaks. You would want to cut across the grain about a 1/2 inch like this, and you could slice it into steaks if you wanted to for like a crock pot. If you don't want to, then this becomes a nice roast. You could go into, shave it lengthwise like this in thin strips, go into jerky, or you could cut it into stew meat, 1-inch cubes for stew meat. This sinew should probably come off before you cook it. I like to leave it on as I'm freezing it. It helps protect the meat, so I don't take it off until I'm ready to cook it. And that's finished product right there. There's your two, one from each leg.
There's nothing like throwing a roast in a crock pot or an instant pot, letting her go, and having a nice roast for dinner.
Okay, here's the back strap out of the deer. And virtually it's just one long, semi-round piece of meat. And virtually what I do is take my knife, just poke it in thin, and do this like a filleting fish. You just peel right on down and take all the sinew off. On this, if you do not get it off, it's like trying to chew a tire. And obviously there's a garbage bucket under the table. We just throw all this stuff in that we don't want in there, and then we take it out and feed it to the critters. Whoever wants it later can have it. Once you cut this into steaks, it's hard to peel this off. That's why I do it now. If you would leave it on to protect it in the freezer, that would be fine too, but when you get it out, then it's harder to peel it off. It's easier to peel it off all in one long strip. Okay, and then what I do is I just take once it's out here, I just kind of take a little bit off the end. That's good meat, nothing matter with it, but it just, for a steak, it's just not great. And then what we do is we will do probably about a 6-inch portion, and that just works out fantastic on a grill. Enough for 2 people.
Yeah, wrap it in bacon.
And there's a little sinew on here that you can keep working and getting off, or you can just leave it on and get it off right before you cook it. It's just whatever you want. And then you get down to the end where it's smaller, I just kind of come in and okay, there you go. And the same on this end, I just kind of square it up. It gets so thin that it just doesn't, you can't get this is burnt and this isn't done. So you just kind of make it so it's the same thickness all the way through.
That's right.
There you go, there's 4 meals.
Off of one back strap. So this would be the part, again, I peeled it out in one piece right along the spine, and yeah, it's awesome stuff. It's probably one of the best parts of the deer along with the tenderloin, inner loins.
Okay, this is a bottom round. Looks similar to top round, just a little different shape. Virtually the easiest way to do this is you turn it over and you'll see where the sinew and the joint runs through here. And you just kind of peel it open gently.
Drain off the back leg of the deer.
And you just kind of separate the muscles. There's actually kind of 3 muscles here. There's one, and then this is what they call the eye of the round. And a lot of times I'll just leave it in the other roast, but I will separate it out today just to show you. There's the eye of the round. Here's one roast, and here's another roast. Now what I do is just kind of square this up so it makes it where it's more appealing to the eye. And you will peel all this heavy fat off the top because you do not want that. It's just very tallowy and just kind of nasty stuff. So
Kind of sticks to the roof of your mouth. And
yes, it's just like you got to take your fingernail in there and peel it off. And then I just kind of square these up where they look kind of nice. And if by chance you got a bloodshot area, you can kind of take your tip of your knife and kind of scrape it and clean it up. And you can see how you can kind of peel it right out of there. Okay. There's another roast. This can be a roast, or you can slice this for little medallions and sear it and throw it in the crock pot also. Or just sear it up done. Do not overcook it. You just won't enjoy it overcooked. I don't like any of my deer overcooked. And obviously the trimmings all goes in the burger. And the same, you can make this into jerky, you can do it a roast, you can do whatever you feel like doing with it.
so essentially, guys, what we're doing is just cleaning up the meat. You know, any hairs from the actual skinning process, pulling those off, getting the sinew or silver skin and additional fat that we don't want on the meat, and taking that off. Another thing that we do with the back strap is we'll turn them into butterfly steaks, and we'll show you on one of those. We'll cut a couple of those and show you how we do that.
Okay. Here's the other back strap off of it. Same thing. You can identify it by the long silver skin that's on it. Peel it off. discard it. I'll cut a pack or two of steaks out of this just so you have some idea of what we're talking about.
Uh-oh. I think one of our helpers is here.
Good morning, young man.
Andy. Good.
Yeah, this is. I had an SOS call this morning already.
Come down my road, I'm like, ah, shit, this ain't bad. I hit one away, and I'm like, oh.
Maybe I better slow down a little bit, huh?
Exactly.
Okay, go back to the same thing. Just kind of clean it up so you got a nice fresh end. Head that to burger. You come over here about a half an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick, whatever you want, and you cut most of the way through. And then you do the same thing one down, and you cut all the way through. And then you fold it out like that, and there's a nice butterfly steak, they call it. And then you do, I usually do 3 or 4 to a pack, depending on the size of the family. But you just lay it out flat like that. You can do the same with boneless pork loin that you can buy at the store. And if you happen to screw up and cut all the way through, it's not a big deal. You just have, individual ones. I will show you what happens when you, oops, there you go. Well, there you go. There's an individual one that you can do the same thing.
Yep. Oops.
And a lot of times it's nice to wrap this in with that package for the simple fact is while you're cooking it, you can kind of have a sample steak and then you know, well, these aren't quite done. I better have another little bite. And nobody will know it.
So making your butterfly steaks is just that simple off the back strap. Take the silver skin off, cut it halfway through, cut it full way through, just a little bit further down, flop it open. So that's really it for the specialty cuts. We've shown you how to get all the meat off the front leg, shown you how to do the roast, the front round and the back round, and now we've done the back strap. So next up is the burger, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit, but we got 2 more front legs to do, 2 more back straps to do, because again, we're doing 2 deer, and one of our helpers has shown up. There's Mr. Andy right there. So we're gonna get to work here. We got a lot of work to do this morning. Okay, guys, the entire gang is here. Miss April, she's right there. She doesn't want her face on, so I'm gonna cover it with my hand. She doesn't want to be on camera, and that's okay. So we're gonna try to keep her out of the videos. But over here, I talked about the grinder, and Billy is putting it together. It's a serious machine. Not available to everybody. Ken scored it on a good deal with a butcher shop closing, and we get to make use of it when we're processing our deer. So it's pretty nice to have, not gonna lie. I've done it. I've made my burger on those smaller Cabela type units, and trust me, those are a pain. This one is a 5-horse. Again, gonna be hard to come by, but if you can find yourself a nice grinder that's similar in size, I guess, it's gonna make life a lot easier. But essentially what we're gonna do is run it through 2 plates. We're gonna do a coarse plate and a finer plate. We don't like to do super fine, makes burgers, just the texture isn't quite right. So we're gonna do a coarse plate, and then I don't know if it's called a semi or a medium plate, but we'll show you those when Billy gets these, when we get it set up and rolling. So we got Andy over here. He's now cutting meat. He just showed up, and that's Shane, Wendy, and then of course Ken. So continuing to trim up meat, and we'll start the grinding process here shortly, and then we'll show you how we package meat to preserve it in the freezer. So before we get the grinder fired up and start making noise where you can't hear me, I wanted to show you the coarse plate, which I'll get to here in a second, but I also want to show you this right here. These are beef trimmings. I said it in the video, the earlier video when I was skinning and quartering the dough, that we use beef trimmings to help get a little bit more fat in with our meat. Helps your burgers stick together, helps the meat not dry out as much when you're making a burger or spaghetti meat or whatever the case may be, chili meat. Adding some beef with some beef trimmings helps. There's some fat in here. I don't know what we got here, 80-20. A lot of times we'll use, we prefer 80-20. Sometimes we'll use 90-10, sometimes 70-30. Kind of depends on what's available. And then we'll mix that up to 50% deer. So you'll have 50% deer, 50% trimmings. I think this time, with as expensive as beef is, I think we're going to do about 30 or 40%. So it's going to be a little bit drier, but it'll be fine. It'll taste fine. It's just going to be a little bit cheaper now with the beef prices. So anyways, this is the course plate. Here's my fingers. You can see that's a pretty big hole. Probably, let's call it 3/8 of an inch. So we'll grind it down to that size, and we'll start mixing it with the trimmings right then. And then we'll switch out plates, go to a little finer plate, and then we'll have our burger ready to go. Okay, so this is kind of how we do things. We've got the entire crew again that is here. We've got our specialty meats, the roast, and some of the backstrap cut over here. Miss April, who again doesn't want to be on camera, which is fine. We're going to tease her about that a little bit, but it's fine. She is cutting paper. Tyler is handling the meat. And Miss Wendy is starting to wrap the meat. So we're going to show you that entire process of wrapping the meat here in a little bit, but it's kind of an assembly line type situation. Guys are cutting up more of the burger over there. They're probably getting upset because I'm not helping out at the moment. I'm filming, but they're just going to have to deal with it. So it's an assembly line situation. Guys are cutting meat for burger. We're starting to wrap the roast and the specialty cuts. And Tyler's our meat handler. Wendy's currently the only wrapper. Once we get to the burger, we'll all be wrapping and labeling and all that fun stuff. So, but for now, this is how we roll. Okay, so you can see we have started the burger process, and essentially what they are doing is grabbing deer meat, then beef trimmings in somewhat of an equal fashion, throwing it down the throat of the grinder, letting it grind, and doing the coarse screen right now. As soon as they're done with all of the, we got 2 tubs of burger meat. As soon as they're done with that, they'll switch screens, do another grind, and then we'll start wrapping. Just a quick screen switch, and we'll be grinding our final grind of burger. Our final grind is 1/8. That is a 1/8 inch screen. So we're gonna have burger to wrap here very quickly. You might be curious what the wet cloth is for. If you get any air gaps in the screw that is pushing out the meat, that meat can explode and make a pretty good mess. So a wet cloth right over top just helps the meat fall right down into the tub right there. So now we are making our packages of deer burger. Shane is measuring out approximately 2 pounds. Tyler is then handing the meatball, a giant meatball. That's a big meatball. Putting it on the paper for the wrappers. And we'll show you how we wrap to preserve our meat for the freezer.
I like to do 3 folds down, about 1 inch. And then I like my packages flat and square. So I mash it down. The big option is the big thing is trying to get all the air out of the packages. Air is your enemy, and so you try to squeeze out all the air you possibly can and try to create a seal where you are not getting any air back in. And this is a plastic lined freezer wrap. It is not butcher paper that we use. So you have a plastic sealed package.
There you go. Then over here, we're stacking our meat before we put it in the coolers to take home. Simple labeling. DB22 is deer burger for 2022 when it was wrapped and backstrap, and then over here's a roast. So it's really an extremely simple process that is made a lot easier by having a lot of hands. Yes, you can do it with 1 or 2 people, no problem. This just saves us a little time and also is a good time to get together with people, family, friends, and process deer. So I try to help them out when they do their deer when I can, and they return the favor. So it's a good time stacking deer meat, but that's a wrap, literally. That's a wrap on today's video. Hope you all learned a little bit of something. Again, there are a ton of ways to skin, quarter, butcher, and process your deer. This is just the way we do it and have done it for a long time. You know, we don't get fancy tomahawk steaks and do that sort of thing. You can do that, obviously, if you want, but we just like to keep it simple and keep it tasty.